I'm sorry?
We are recording the session, Prabhuji.
Okay, okay, very good. I was reflecting that one topic, nice topic, is to understand what is mental speculation, jnana prayasa, and what is the distinction between jnana and transcendental knowledge as understood in bhakti, as a devotional service, which is not mental speculation. So one of the distinctions is that one in one category, one is, it's like a parampara. You receive and you give what you just received. You pass it on. And in the other one, you are trying to, on the strength of your own mental capability, to understand and to explain transcendental subject matter, which is speculation. So the training in Krishna consciousness is to learn how to receive and to repeat what you have received only. Otherwise, we will become guilty of mental speculation. Evam parampara praptam imam rajashyo vidu. In this way, it has to be received. And if one does it on the strength of his own ability, all these messages keep coming up. Anyway, if one, and he can be very intelligent. This jnana, this speculation, can be very intelligent, if you like, very correct. Let's even use the word faultless. It can even be faultless. But it is jnana prayasa. It's not in the category of parampara. So the training in Krishna consciousness is how to avoid coming on the level of your mental capability. Avoid it. And do it on the strength of what one has received, actually received from the Guru Parampara. So this is shown by Srila Prabhupada. Very nice example. He was asked a number of times, Swamiji, what made you come to the West? What made you start this Krishna consciousness movement? And his answer was always the same. It never varied. He said, I've come on the order of my spiritual master. He could have said, I see a need. I see a need in the West for this knowledge, for this wisdom. But he always said, because it is the order of my spiritual master. So this is very interesting. That Srila Prabhupada was determined not to bring it down to his own idea. He had valid ideas. He could have. And they would have applied. They would have been true. But he always stuck to this because he had trained himself only to speak what he had received. There's another example Prabhupada there's another characteristic of Prabhupada that illustrates this also. You know, whenever he speaks, even if it's not a class, even if it's just a morning walk, even if it's a room conversation, he will always quote Sanskrit shloka. He could have made his point without the Sanskrit shloka, but he always uses it. You know, he had trained himself that he was paraphrasing what he had received from parampara, evam parampara praptam. Not his own ability, not his own logic and argument. So I'm a little worried, Sri Gaurav. If anybody wants to come in, they can come in now.
Yes, they can.
Time had gone.
Yeah, they can come anytime.
I'm sorry?
They can. So you mean to ask, like, can they join the Zoom meeting? Yes, they can. Yes,
Yeah,
they can.
so please feel free to join in. There is another illustration of it's an interesting illustration, this. If I can, yeah, I'm there. There is an interesting illustration of this receiving and not on the power of one's own mental ability. And this is noted by Professor Edward Dimmock from University of Chicago in his foreword to Bhagavad Gita as it is. You know, it's interesting that a person who is not a devotee, not initiated, has picked up on this point as a very significant. See, in his foreword, Professor Dimmock makes 4 points. The first one is that the Bhagavad Gita appeals to the Western mind. That's the first paragraph. Well, first part of the first paragraph. In the second part, his point is that devotion to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is not mere sentiment. I'll read what he says. The devotion spoken of is a deliberate means of religious satisfaction, not a mere outpouring of poetic emotion. Next to the Bhagavad Puran, a long work from South India, the Gita is the text most frequently quoted in the philosophical writings of the Gaudiya Vaishnava school. The school represented by Swami Bhaktivedanta as the latest in a long succession of teachers. You see, he's noticing the succession of the teaching. And this is a very key point, that it is not made up. It is very authentic because it is based, let's say, exclusively on what was received. This jnane prayasam udapasya namantaiva, is a great tendency, is a like, fruitive activity is a great tendency. It's not easy to escape. Like the impulse to enjoy the fruits of one's labors, it's very deep rooted. The impulse to speculate is very, very deep rooted. Actually, we can go as far as to say, according to this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Jnane Priyasa Buddhapasya Namantaya, to give up this prayas, this endeavor, this tendency to speculate, is it won't go away. Actually, it won't go away. It's so deep rooted, it means it will not, it is there. So what is the solution? The solution is not to try to give it up, but to simply replace it. Simply replace it. You can't give up fruitive activities, but you can replace them. And that's the beauty of this Bhakti Yoga. It allows us to replace fruitive activity and to replace the tendency to speculate, which is a very wonderful thing. So the person has to have this training. I like your introduction. The first part of my life in Krishna consciousness was training. Training, actually how to obey, just to obey, just to be obedient. And this is a very important quality to cultivate in Krishna consciousness. If one has not trained to obey, he will not be trained to repeat what he has heard, and only what he has heard. No more, no less. So this is also ties in with another feature of Krishna consciousness, chastity, faithfulness. That one does not become a prostitute to the transcendental knowledge one receives from parampara. It does not mix it with other ideas. I'll give you an example of mixing. So Krishna says to Arjuna, you're not the body. Arjuna puts so many arguments. And then the tendency is to say, well, because you're not the body, you can be transgender. You see, now you see the example of mixing. What actually Krishna says is, you're not the body, therefore do not lament. You see how important that detail was. Therefore do not lament. Therefore, do not neglect your duty. These are the therefores Krishna gives from the point of you're not the body. But when we speculate, we'll come up with an idea that you're neither male nor female. That's a speculation. In fact, if you pay attention very carefully to what Krishna says, because you're not the body, you must do your bodily duty. You see the significance. It is to urge Arjuna to do his bodily duty. Kshatriya is a body. His bodily duty. He must not neglect it. This is the power of paying attention, of being faithful, of being chaste in Krishna consciousness, and not to be a prostitute. I think I've given enough ammunition for questions if there are. Do you have any questions? What do you say, Shri Gautam?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for sharing. Am I audible, Prabhuji?
1 second, let me try something.
Okay, so I already have a hand raised by Nishant Prabhu. He wants to ask question, but I'll wait for you to.
1 second, I
Sure,
can't.
sure.
But I'm unable to hear properly. 1 second.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you. Am I now audible? Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Am I now audible, Prabhuji, to you?
Your default, what did it say?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Why am I?
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
How do I get this to?
There is someone who can help, Prabhuji.
It's not coming through.
Okay, am I audible without the headphone? Maybe you have to raise the volume of your system.
1 second, I have to find this way. Says headphone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible, Prabhuji?
It's so sad. Really, I can't hear anything.
Oh, is it?
Maybe now.
Hare Krishna.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Okay. So Nishant Prabhu, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Nishant Prabhu, yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you Prabhuji for the enlightening session on chanting. Prabhuji, one question I had was that, as you said, we should not be speculative, mental speculation we should be avoiding. In this world of duality, how to get rid of that, because we know that sincere chanting is the way, but still in Kali Yuga it's a struggle to every day continue, come chant, and with this bodily austerities and all, not to speculate. So what is the solution, Prabhuji, to be sincere, not speculate, and focus on chanting? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So the key is in training. You train. Just like how do you become an expert cook? You need training. Yeah, and you start with small things. Small things. You don't become expert in the beginning, but you baby steps. So that's why Prahlad Maharaj says, Komaram Acharat Pragyu. The training should begin as early in life as possible. So one becomes habituated. He does that automatically, but initially it requires training. Baby steps. You learn to, just like I told you, my first part of my training was obedience. In essence, you do this, you do this, you do this. You say yes, yes, yes. You do this. So this obedience is very, very important. It's important for a disciple, for a son, for a citizen, for a wife, for all relationships where there's a junior involved. There has to be obedience on the one side. Srila Prabhupada makes important reference to disobedience when he has chastised his disciples, that if there is no obedience, then there is no disciple, no discipline. So this is, we sometimes go on to esoteric topics, but this is a very important, how you say, it's not esoteric, but it's very important. It's very, very important. Without disobedience, one will speculate. You can't not speculate. You can't not have fruitive desires also. You see, these things are not optional. You don't have a switch. You have to have a replacement from fruitive activity, from speculation. And that alternative is to obey the parampara, the teachings that have been received, without adding and subtracting, without any whimsical participation in the matter, Srila Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita. That's the important thing. Is that okay, Prabhuji? Yeah. Anybody else?
So there's one more devotee who wants to ask. Ashray Mukund Prabhuji, you can unmute yourself and ask. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, my question is, as you told, that whatever we are receiving from the Guru Parampara, right? And accordingly, we should be passing that out and applying that in our life. How can we understand that point that we are actually deviating that and we are putting something from our own? Is there any way to understand how we'll get to know about this?
You ask a good question, because one of the techniques of teaching or learning a point is to be able to say what it is not. You have to be able to distinguish between two similar things, but be able to distinguish the difference. That is intelligence. So when we say faithfully following what we have received, what is it not? What is it not is, like I said, you may be right, you may be very intelligent, but it is yours. It is not, you are unable to quote a reference. So part of the training of obedience is to learning to speak what you can quote precisely. One of the mistakes a person who will fall for speculation will make is that he thinks that the quotation is general, but I'm going to say something specific. But actually, the truth is, the quotation, Shastric reference, is very precise. It applies very precisely today, even in the world of headphones and computers. It applies very precisely because the eternal doesn't change. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata. The eternal does not change. What applied then applies today. So I'm going to give an example of somebody who is applying Vedic principles to an issue that's very, let's say, practical. It's not theoretical. It's the story of Princess Rukmini, right? So she was going to be married the next day to Shishupal. And she thought, I have to resolve this problem. My heart is with Lord Krishna, who I have never seen. So you see, look what she reflects. She says, I need a messenger who can take my message to Lord Krishna so that he can come and save me. Now, in her thinking, she thinks I need a Brahmana. Why? Because they're truthful. She says this in the Krishna book. Prabhupada says, she says that a Brahmana has two qualities. So you see now, qualities are general. He is truthful. That's a Brahmana, otherwise he's not a Brahmana. And secondly, just see how she says, and he will not deceive me. That's the second point. He's truthful and he will not deceive me. He will do it. He will do his mission. So she deputes a Brahmana to go to Dwarka. You see, now the point about a Brahmana is general. Shamo dama tapa saucham shanti rajyavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikam brahma karma swabhava. General. But she applies it, the general. This is how good it is. If you learn to train yourself to obey, you understand how it applies. How that general applies to the specific. She applied a princess, she's able to, she had so trained herself. She understood I need a Brahmana who is truthful and will not deceive me. And he did accomplish, but just see how she was thinking. So you see, we live in a world in which we think we're the body, in which we think the goal of life is bodily pleasures and comforts, bodily, dollar. We're conditioned. This is our conditioning. You can't switch it off. But if you learn to train as a devotee of Krishna, you can replace that with a different set of impetus. Nectar of devotion, our devotional creeper is based on impetus. You have to have an impetus that drives you to practice Krishna consciousness. So you have to investigate and explore how much training. See, sometimes we look at the external of our activity, but actually it's a development of our devotional creeper, which is in the heart, which nobody can see. That means you also cannot see. Nobody can see, but you also cannot see. But through training and learning by hearing, you start to see by your ears, by the knowledge you receive. My training is going to save me. Whatever the bodily situation may or may not be, you start to leave that behind. Is that okay? I may have gone a little bit more than you asked, but I wanted to give you fuller. Does it satisfy you? You can follow up. You can follow up if you will.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
It's all right then. The
Okay.
answer was all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. So there is a question on the chat. The question is sent to me directly. I'll ask that for him. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. Nowadays, while preaching, we observe many ISKCON devotees are going and listening to saints outside ISKCON, especially in Vrindavan. Afterwards, they leave ISKCON and join them, leaving Srila Prabhupada's divine movement. How to prevent them and stop this diversion? This hurts a lot. Please share how to deal with this and avoid this. Your servant Ramraj Das.
Yeah. First of all, you have made a correct observation. It is happening. But it it is an evidence of what I have said through this session. They had not trained themselves to be faithful, to be chaste in receiving from the parampara and being faithful. The training was missing, so you see, this is bound to happen because this the theories put by people are very, you see, in the realm of the mind, just like in the realm of fruitive activities, heaven is very appealing. You understand? It's like, oh, mangoes or sense enjoyment without any side effects. It's wonderful. So in the mental heaven, a person becomes attracted to the flowery words of ideas. It's so wonderful. It's so attractive. It's so appealing. But devotional service does not try to compete in that arena of unending sense gratification and unending mental bliss. It 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 is a departure. It leaves behind. But this you can only do if you're trained. You can't do it. You if you do it on the strength of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, Asochan Anvasochastam Pragya. But you will hear more things from these people. You will leave behind Bhagavad Gita. You will not. Bhagavad Gita doesn't do it on the competition in this arena of mental speculation, because Bhagavad Gita itself is not a mental speculation. It is the absolute truth. It does not try to compete with either heaven of sense gratification or the heaven of mental speculation. There is a heaven. There is a heaven. It's very attractive. To mental speculators, it's very attractive. And you have to understand, Srila Prabhupada's time, there were other speculators then. People loved them. They went there. But Srila Prabhupada gave you not a speculation, he gave you the absolute truth. So much so that if you applied it, you would experience transcendental bliss. Mental speculation does not give you transcendental bliss. It'll give you mental gratification. There are 6 senses which include the mind. So that means there are objects of each of the senses. For the eyes, form. For the mind, there is this gratification of ideas. And they're very attractive. One has to give it up. But he can only give it up if he has this alternative. See, association with Krishna, if you look at all the Brijavasis, the associates of the Lord, they're not displaying some mental agility and mental. Although I gave the example of Princess Rukmini, but it wasn't as a speculator. It was as a devotee of the Lord. She thought of this, that I need a Brahmana who is truthful and who will not deceive me. So this phenomena will stop the day we start emphasizing this movement is not for speculation. It is meant for evam parampara praptam, receiving transcendental knowledge as it is, unchanged. That's the strength. And that's where see, I'll give an example. If you have an electrical circuit
and it lights, the battery supplies power to light a bulb. And if somebody says, but I can make it pretty, I can put flowers here, or this wire is no good, you have killed the circuit, my dear friend. You made it pretty. You brought in some mental speculation into the process of bhakti, but you killed the bhakti. You killed the circuit. The light will not come on. We're not looking for flowers on our electrical circuit. Bhakti doesn't require this flowery mental speculation. It is a Vishaya Bhanda. It is a poisonous pot you have to avoid. Fruitive activity is a poisonous pot. On another session, I'd like to explain that fruitive activities just cannot be given up at all. They can be replaced, but they cannot be given up. It's so, I mean, have you seen what it's like? First class, have you seen a Rolls Royce? Oh, so nice. So nice. You cannot say it is not nice. Have you seen a model, a star who is, made to, the senses just go completely there. You cannot, it is so, but somebody like Yamunacharya, he spits at the thought because he has a higher taste. Is that okay? I mean, people are leaving. And that was I was addressing. I'll tell you what I was addressing a little bit more specifically. I was addressing the speculation that goes on in the name of Srimad Bhagavatam class in ISKCON. It's all speculation, first, because the person hasn't trained himself. Generally, it is found that after reading the end of the purport, he doesn't connect his rest of his class with that verse ever again. A whole class. The verse could have been anything, and he would have given a lecture about something else. That is a sign of not having been trained. Why? Because he does not know what to say. What more do I say? Asochana is done. Okay, don't grieve for what is not worthy of grief. It's done. Now we'll talk about something else. This is a mistake because he has not learned to appreciate the importance, the significance, the supreme personality of Godhead whom you're trying to worship. Why did he say it? Why did he say? And he doesn't say Asocha one verse, he says many verses. Do not lament. He says many verses actually. Out of the second chapter, many verses are just on this one point. So the Lord is attaching importance. You are receiving knowledge from him, but you have nothing to say. So you're not trained. Is that okay, Prabhuji? Do you have any other follow-up, or would you like to summarize what was discussed?
I think so. It makes a lot of sense, Prabhuji, and thanks for highlighting this very, very important and deep, point, which will undoubtedly help. I just want to check if Ramraj Prabhu has any comment to make. Okay, so he sent a reply saying thanks. Yeah, so he did understand. And if someone wants to follow up, there are many thanks coming and many claps. So thank you, Prabhuji. And if anyone wants to follow up with Prabhuji on this specific point, you can reach out to me. I will give his number and he can be reached on that number. Thank you very much, Hariram Prabhuji, for taking out your valuable time. Thank you very much, and thanks all of you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.